Welcome to the special meeting of the Orville City Council, July 20th, 2021. I'm calling this meeting to order. You stand, can I have the roll, please?
Councilmember Pittman?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Present.
Councilmember Riggs?
Here.
Councilmember Hatley? Here. Councilmember Goodson?
Here.
Vice Mayor Thompson? Mayor Reynolds?
Here. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I'll second. Beats the alternative.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Let the record show that Vice Mayor Thompson is here. Do you want to vote on this item? Accepting the agenda?
Yes, sir. Yes, the answer is yes.
The motion carries for the adoption of the agenda with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, moving on to regular business, we have one item, NHA Advisors presentation regarding the unfunded pension liability.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and council members. We have a short presentation from NHA Advisors. Eric Scriven, the principal there. It's going to be a very short presentation, reviewing some of the things we've already discussed and going over some new things. But basically, at the end of this workshop, we're going to be looking for direction to see if you want to pursue something like this. So we want to make sure that you have all of the information you need to make a thorough and informed analysis before we decide whether to take this risk or not. So I'll hand it over to Eric.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council, and staff. As Ruth mentioned, we put together a 9-page presentation which is meant to review the background as well as the options and objectives, and importantly, once again, discuss the risks. We've got a couple of slides in there. You've perhaps seen them before. Behind the 9 pages, I did also attach the June 9th presentation, which was lengthier, in case there's questions that we want to reference some of those pages. I just want to make sure that we're prepared for all of the questions, but it should be a fairly quick run through. I have, can I share my screen?
Yes, you can.
No, it does not say that I can. There we are. Did that work? Okay. We wanted to review why we're here, which really is, stating the obvious. The city has a $24.9 million unfunded accrued liability with CalPERS, and that has grown rapidly over the last 7 or 8 years. And in fact, over the last 15 years. You also have an outstanding pension obligation bond that the city issued in 2007, outstanding amount of $2.8 million. Like most public agencies in the state of California, these unfunded liabilities have risen rapidly over the last decade or more. And for many communities, particularly in years where revenues have been stagnant and in years perhaps when revenues are growing, but these costs are growing faster, there's the concern that these annual year-over-year cost increases to repay this unfunded liability can crowd out other community priorities. So we've been talking about a number of cost management strategies that the city of Oroville does do and has done. And the idea is that the restructuring of this unfunded liability with CalPERS may also be a useful tool to, in addition to the other cost management strategies that the city has undertaken, might be a useful tool. And additionally, as we all know, the interest rates, we probably would not be discussing this if interest rates were at 5.5 or thereabouts percent. But right now, interest rates are near all-time lows. They've continued to be very low. Right now, they're in the 3 to 3.5% range. It depends on the credit and the length of term that is selected for the restructuring transaction. And over the last 18 months, there's been over 50 public agencies, mostly cities, some counties, and a number of special districts that have executed these UAL restructurings during the, as I said, the last 18 months. So given the low rates and these increasing year-over-year payments upon your CalPERS unfunded liability, the idea is that this debt can be restructured to a level more predictable repayment schedule and save based on taking out 7% CalPERS debt with a lower, say, 3.5% bond rate. There is the potential to save a significant amount of money. The city can restructure this debt using any amount of that $24.9 million. You can create whatever repayment shape the city deems prudent. On the shape, whether you do a level, you can choose to do a level or slightly ascending payment. On the repayment term, you can choose to do a 20, 25, 30-year or whatever the city council deems prudent. On the amount, the city can choose to refinance and restructure that full $24.9 million, or it can choose to refinance and restructure a lesser amount. In general, the more of the CalPERS UAL that is taken out, if you will, refinanced, swapping out the 7% for a lower bond rate of 3.5 or thereabouts. But the longer the term that you do, you create a lower repayment schedule, and that repayment schedule in general becomes a more resilient structure to deal with if there are, and we know there will be, future economic shocks where your revenues are stagnant or reduced, as well as the likelihood of CalPERS underperforming in any particular year on their reinvestment, and therefore adding a new layer of unfunded liability debt. As discussed in detail during the couple of previous workshops, there is an unavoidable risk when you undertake a UAL restructuring using a pension bond, and that is reinvestment risk and market timing risk. If CalPERS does poorly with its reinvestment of the additional monies given to them by the city, in essence, the proceeds of the pension bond, this can potentially mean that the city is worse off having executed a transaction. The way to think about this is the rule of thumb is if over the length of the term of the bond issue that CalPERS earns less than the bond rate, then the city would have been worse off executing a transaction. Additionally, if CalPERS has a bad reinvestment year in the early part of the time frame after a pension bond is issued, say 1, 2, or 3 years out, then of course this amplifies the loss. You would have lost money because you have assets with CalPERS already, but the additional monies would also amplify that loss, and therefore it creates the need over the long term, over the length of the term of the bond issue, that the CalPERS would need to earn more than the bond rate to make the city whole, and at the end of the term, looking back to consider the transaction a success. I'd like to stop there for a moment and ask again if there are any questions on the objectives of such a transaction, and most particularly the potential risks.
I have a question.
Councilmember Riggs?
Thank you. One of the risks you speak of is if CalPERS earns less than the bond rate. Do you know in recent history if that's occurred?
Great question. Back in 2008 and 2009, they had a couple of very bad years where they earned under 3.5%. In fact, 1 year I think they lost 20%, and I think the next year it was around 10. So since then, of course, we know there's been a rally in the market, and generally speaking, there's been a higher average rate of return than a 3.5%. In fact, I have that statistic if you'd like to see it on in the appendix. Be glad to show it to you.
Thank you.
So up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that the averages over the 5 and 10 year horizon have been above 3.5%. 10 years, as we know, since the Great Recession, there's been a great bull market in equities and generally speaking at all asset classes, including real estate. And even over the last 5 years, we've seen that it's been above 3.5%. Wouldn't really look at the 20 and 30 year averages. Those, I think we're in a new era, if you will, in reinvestments where generally speaking, I think most investment professionals would say we're in a lower rate of return environment. And I think you all have heard the chatter from CalPERS about the board revisiting the fact that they want to perhaps lower the CalPERS discount rate from 7% to something lower. And we can get into that detail if you would like. As we all know, CalPERS just reported a banner year of 21% earnings for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021.
Thank you.
If I may, I'll turn the page. This is the City of Oroville's repayment shape on its unfunded liability with CalPERS, and we've layered on the pension obligation bond that you have outstanding. And as you can see, the unfunded liability has more than doubled over the last 7 years, and that's created a really irregular and ascending repayment shape. This goes back to 2015, but if you look at 2021, 2022, you're going to have that pension bond that's outstanding fall away, but you still have ascending payments from 2023, or I should say 2024 through and including 2032, 2033, and 2034. So that the cumulative effect of those payment increases over fiscal 2020 levels is approximately $5.8 million. And we do know that there'll be a new base layered on in this next fiscal year from the 4.7% return that CalPERS had in the fiscal year ending 2020. So that is not shown here. It'll marginally increase this. And 2 years from now, we will have the benefit, or the city will have the benefit of that 21% increase that they just booked and reported last week, actually. So that should lower this overall repayment schedule. Everything just sort of lowers down. The shape is still the same, but everything will lower unless CalPERS takes some of that 21% gain and does some things with their assumptions, for instance, lowering the discount rate. You've all seen this sheet before. We didn't change the numbers. The market is very strong right now, but we want to be conservative. There's three options that are shown here, not to make a decision if you decided to move forward, but mainly to illustrate how the city of Oroville could restructure its unfunded liability and also refinance those 3 years remaining on the pension bond that are at 5.5%, I believe, to create a more level and predictable repayment schedule through the 20 or 30-year time horizon, depending on what the city might choose if it wanted to proceed forward. These numbers and the bars that show the existing unfunded liability repayment shape assume a 7% return. That's the assumptions that CalPERS shows currently. We do know that they're going to change that likely in November, but this is the snapshot right now. So these are the numbers I'm sorry, was there a question?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. These are the numbers that are produced from these three lines. Again, the comparison figure is if CalPERS earns 7% on its rate of return through the term of this analysis, these would be the savings if you restructured $19 million of the $24.9 million to create a funded ratio of 92%. We've shown three scenarios, a 20-year level, and on the right side, a 25-year level in the orange. And then there's the middle one, a 22-year that has a 1% ascending line just to show the differences. As you can see, the savings are very strong if CalPERS earns at 7%. I would stress that if CalPERS earns less than 7%, the savings figures would be less. But you can see that the length of term, there's an interesting thing that occurs here, as we've stated in previous workshops, where you have the shorter, the 20-year transaction that's level. You can see that the cumulative savings, the third line from the bottom, are $6.5 million versus the 25-year restructuring, where the savings would be $3.2 million. The reason is you have some years, because you have a longer term, you have some years on the back end where you're making debt service payments, where previously you had no unfunded liability payments being made to CalPERS. And the time value of money being what it is, the present value savings, when you discount the savings, they're pretty close. The 25-year is about $5.3 million on the right, and the present value savings on the 20-year is about $5.8 million. One of the interesting points to be made here is if you're restructuring, you're trying to create some resiliency to be able to absorb an economic shock where you have stagnant or reduced revenues, or CalPERS has a very bad year and layers on a new level or layer of debt. The longer term creates a more headroom, if you will, and the average savings for the first 14, 15 years on the right side, you can see the longer term, you have an $865,000 average annual savings versus the 20-year is $628,000 average annual savings. So it creates more room to have a longer term, as I had stated up front, and it creates a more resilient structure to absorb these types of possibilities if there's economic calamity or CalPERS has a bad year. Any questions?
I don't think so.
So we wanted to illustrate once again when I say CalPERS has a bad year, we're going to show 2 slides to that effect. If CalPERS has a 10% hit in year 1, you give them the money, there's going to be a new base layered on, whether you issue a bond or not. If you do not issue a bond, you're going to have the gray bars is your outstanding CalPERS payment schedule, and you would add on the black bars if you had not done a transaction with a 10% hit. That would be the new base if they had a 10%, a negative 10% return. If you had done a transaction where I think we were using $19 million transaction, so you gave them an additional $19 million and they had that bad year in the first year that you gave them the money, you would go from the nice flat orange line in this 30-year, 25-year POB scenario. It would rise. The new layer that would be added would be the dotted orange line. And it's important to understand that you're going to have a new layer, whether you do a transaction or not. But if you give them more money and they have a bad year right out of the gate or out of the first several years, or consistently underperform, that giving them that extra money and they underperform has the potential of creating, in retrospect, at the end of the 25 years, look back, a regret that you may have had not had the benefit of the transaction.
Excuse me, Eric, we have a question from Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, so when you say bad year, what is, quantify that? So with that new amount.
CalPERS is targeting right now, they assume that they're going to earn 7% every year. So to the extent that they do not hit their target, in this instance, they're 10% below, so it would be a minus 3% return year. They would add on a new base. In fact, in fiscal 20, they earned 4.7%, which is slightly under the 7% number. So this current next fiscal year, there will be a new base layer, I should say, added on to your existing repayment shape, the gray bars. Of course, they just earned 21% in this most recent fiscal year. So that is going to be factored in 2 years, and that would be a negative base. So everything would be reduced.
And the great,
yep.
A follow-up question, if I will. In the Great Recession, or 08, 09, What did you say, negative 20?
Negative 20.
Okay. So, I mean, certainly the market has that potential. And just maybe in your own analysis, maybe it'll help all of us. So, in this market that we're currently in, some economists say that it's overinflated and an adjustment is coming. What say you? And so if we're buying in right now, I'm just thinking, yeah, right? I want to know if I need to run out and buy some stock or not after the meeting.
Yeah, no, I'm not the one. I probably wouldn't be before you this afternoon if I had a crystal ball on the market, interest rates or stocks. I think it's a fair question. It's a very good question. And as your municipal advisor, we want to be very cautious because everyone who put money into the market last year is looking really, really good. They're feeling really good about the transaction. So right now, are we at a top? Is CalPERS going to be able, over the near term and long term, to be able to exceed not just the bond rate, but the discount rate that they're assumed, 7%, or if they decide to lower it to 6.5, is that a target that they're able to hit? I truly can't answer that question for you. I can say that the chances of the transaction being a benefit and positive for the city greatly increases the lower that bond rate is. So if we're at 3.5%, there's the ability to stress test that, have an actuary look at it and give you some probabilities. But if the city decided to proceed with this, I think we would be talking about strategies with staff there are some strategies, perhaps the idea of dollar cost averaging, which is, doing half now and half a year from now, or there's different strategies that the city could employ to, or you could just issue a lower amount to put less at work now. We think it's a valid question that we want to be mindful and thoughtful about before we go into the market.
Which was my follow-up to the follow-up question. And you've kind of answered that. So you see volatility in the market, and it looks like things aren't going our way, but we've already voted on this. We've had the bonds issued. We don't have to give them the whole lump, 19 million, all in one shot. We can hold that back and look for a more opportune time to invest. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that. I think that if the city decides to proceed, the city council is still going to have control. If you want to proceed, then you have your staff and your team ready the transaction. It could be half, it could be a full amount. You could wait 6 months, to see how things shake out. Those are the types of conversations I think we need to have.
Okay, thank you.
So, any other questions? So we did a second slide. There's just to show you 10% hit in year one or 20% hit. I think the 20% negative return in the first year, we showed that to City Council in the last workshop, but you can see that doing a transaction or not doing a transaction, the black bars will come irregardless if you do not do a transaction, just because you have assets with CalPERS that have had a negative 10 or 20% return, if that's what happened. So the fact is, if you do a transaction, you would have more assets with CalPERS, more money with CalPERS. So again, that market timing risk is there if they underperform in the early years of after the transaction. We just wanted to make sure that concept is very clear. Your city manager thought that was very important to reemphasize. So the next steps are, if the city council decides to proceed and undertake a transaction or ready a transaction to go to the market, would be to hire a bond lawyer. We think that your existing paperwork on the 2007 pension obligation bond will allow you to undertake a new one if you decide to proceed without having to go through the courts again. But we, of course, we're not lawyers, so we want to have someone look that over. We have not done that up to this point because City Council hadn't decided to proceed. And so July, there would be some work by the bond lawyer, assuming that the paperwork is good and you can proceed without going to the courts. Then the legal documents and the disclosure documentation would begin to be prepared. And then in August, we tried to fill out the team with an underwriter, the banker that would take the bonds to the market. We'd also get the credit documentation together. And during that time, we would also come through staff to City Council to get your decisions on your preferred structure, whether you want to do 100%, a lesser amount, 20, 25 years, level, ascending. Those are some of the things that would be decided upon by City Council. And we think it's very important that the city adopt a pension funding policy. And we've got some ideas on that, whether you do a transaction or not. And then in September, we would have the credit rating presentation.
Eric, we have a question. Excuse me. Councilmember Smith.
I'm sorry. Just to give us a glimpse of, right now we're obviously going underwater annually. So we're at this, larger 20+ million. How much annually do we need to kick in to where we're at a break-even point on an average basis for CalPERS at this current moment? So that we're not seeing this continual.
That's impossible to tell because it depends on the return of CalPERS. I mean, if they meet their goal of 7%, then it doesn't increase if we pay our annual what we've collected and have to pay. If they don't, then that will go up, and every year that could be different.
Right,
So-
but I guess it's just because all of these are assumptions. Everything here is an
That's
assumption.
correct.
Correct.
So just assuming things continue on the current trajectory that we've seen over the last decade, what would be we're at just 20, whatever it is, 20-something million. Just,
Well, I think the slides have shown us that over the last, I believe it was the
24
last 10 years, we have doubled. We
Right.
went from 12 million to 24 million. So, I mean, if that gives you kind of an idea.
yeah, so we're about 1.2, 1.3, somewhere in there, probably just,
About $2 million a
or
year.
two, okay, even worse than that, okay.
Somewhere in there. Plus, you got to consider the $2 million that the unfunded liability has increased when we've also been paying our annual payments. Plus, we've been paying an extra $1 million. So, I mean, it is, we've been doing our best to combat that, but it still continues to rise at that pace.
And so this whole project here essentially, just stating the obvious, is designed to put to bed what's happened over the damage that's occurred over the last decade.
But we'll be really clear on that. We're not putting it to bed. This is not a mortgage. You don't get rid of that debt.
Yeah.
I mean, what you do is you pay it down, and then if you could use the bucket analogy, you have the one bucket that you're paying on the 19 million on, then you'd have your other bucket where the 5 million's at, and that 5 million can change every year.
Right. No,
Unless Eric has something more to add to that.
Yeah,
No,
that's a bad
that's,
use of terms on my part.
Exactly right. The idea, I think, there is the strong potential of savings just given where interest rates are, and CalPERS, even if they underperform the 7%, but still earn 5.5% or something of that nature, that's still above the 3.5%. Time will tell if that's what they're able to do. But to me, an equal important objective of this is to restructure this debt so that it is more affordable and it's more resilient to potential future shocks from CalPERS underperforming and adding layers, or the economy creating stagnant revenues for the city in the near, in the short term or over the long term. We just don't know. So it creates a more resilience for the city to make this payment while also carrying on its other priorities.
Councilmember Pittman has a question.
Thank you. Eric, have you seen in other situations where cities have gone through this process that you suggest, the legislature taking a look at changing some rules to diminish or restrict this type of activity?
I have not. No, I have not. The pension obligation bond law, where you go to the courts to validate the transaction. And the reason you do that is CalPERS is a debt on the city's balance sheet, but it needs to be validated because it's a different kind of debt, but it is there. And so you go to the courts to validate that is a debt that is imposed by law. That's the terminology that the lawyers use. Once you've validated it and the court has essentially adjudicated that and said it is a debt, then you have the ability to refinance that debt without running afoul of the Constitution. And the city of Oroville has already gone through that validation process when it did its 2007 pension obligation bond. We feel pretty sure that it's going to be fine to proceed, but we need to have a lawyer look it over.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Every time a local government gets a good deal, the legislature goes after it. So I ask that just for being the pessimist of the past. Thank you.
I mean, there was a lot of pension transactions done in the early 2000s where CalPERS target discount rate was 8% or 7 3/4, and those transactions were issued at 5.5-6%, and now CalPERS is trying to inch down to a lower discount rate of like 6.5. So those 6% transactions don't look so good. And a lot of those were done where they weren't callable. You couldn't redeem them, so they're stuck with those. That's not the type of transaction that gets done anymore, especially with the lower rates right now. So,
Eric, if I could just ask a question for the council. This type of a bond, if we were to do this and the city were to somehow have some sort of windfall, is there an early payment or prepayment penalty associated with these bonds?
usually these transactions are issued with a 10-year lockout, if you will, and after 10 years, you can redeem them at par. Essentially, only you can just pay them off after 10 years. That's a standard type of bond transaction, whether you're issuing a POB or a sewer bond. So if you want to have a shorter redemption period, typically the investors who are buying those bonds want to be paid for that in the form of a slightly higher interest rate. And usually that's the case, but we always try to ask those questions when you go to the market, see if there's an ability to narrow down that call protection for the investor.
If we understand the process correctly, the next step would be to hire the bond attorney to start looking into what our obligations are as far legally, if we've been validated or not with this debt. But then from there, we're not obligating ourselves to anything at this point, and we are not obligating ourselves until such time as we lock in the interest rate. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. The city has not committed to a transaction until you sign that agreement with the underwriter, the bond purchase agreement, on the date that they sell the bonds to investors. That's right.
Thank you.
Question.
Anything else, Eric?
No, I I think that we've gone through this process well. I'm appreciative that you indulge me. I feel like it's part of my job to go through. These are the most complex bond issues that are out there, in my opinion. So it's important for the decision makers to have all the information to make good decisions. So thank you for indulging me on that.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any blue speaker cards for this special meeting.
Do we have any more questions from the dais? So we're, Mr. LeGrone, you're looking for direction to proceed as presented?
Yes, sir. We're looking for, I don't have the agenda in front of me. I don't know if we're going to vote on this or if we were through consensus, if you would like us to proceed forward. I think this is a very important issue for our city. This is probably the most important issue, quite honestly, that we face, is this debt that is out there that we have to take care of. As I look at this and evaluate this, this is the least bad option. I don't think that there is any really good option in this, because there's nothing that we're going to lock in and we're going to absolutely know for sure. We are taking a chance. We are trying to make an educated decision here. We believe that's why it was important to have Eric here at least 3 times to try to provide the information to the council, because this is a very difficult decision for the council to make, because like I said, it's the least bad option. So we have to evaluate this, decide what you'd like us to do, and move forward. Again, moving forward today does not obligate you to anything at this point. It just allows us to gather more information to bring back to you, and probably not as lengthy of these type of workshops or anything like that, but to bring back so you can better evaluate before you make your final decision. So we're looking forward what you would like to do. Your options are: we can move forward, we can do nothing.
Thank you. We're looking for a motion to direct staff to move forward as presented.
I move that we direct staff to move forward with collecting more data so that we can make a well-informed decision.
Does that mean moving forward with the recommendation with,
The bond attorney?
yeah,
Yes,
I'll second that.
thank you.
The motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Well, thank you, Eric. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a nice day.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if we could take a break now for 15 minutes and we can begin our closed session. We can open up our regularly scheduled council meeting and go to our closed session at 4 p.m.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn this special meeting until July 20th at 4 p.m. Welcome to the Orville City Council meeting of July 20th, 2021. I'm calling this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll?
I apologize, Council. I was helping get your closed session Zoom going. Councilmember Pittman? Here. Councilmember Smith?
Here?
Councilmember Riggs?
Here.
Councilmember Hatley? Councilmember Goodson? Vice Mayor Thompson? Mayor Reynolds?
Here. At this time, we will convene a closed session. Do we have Mr. Huber up? Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Scott is on with us now.
Welcome to the Orville City Council meeting of July 20th, 2021. We are reconvening from closed session where direction was given and no action was taken. Stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved.
I second.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, I'm going to open the meeting up for public communication of the hearing of non-agenda items. This is your opportunity to speak on items that are not on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I have 11 speakers. The first speaker is Stephanie. It will be Bobby O'Reilly.
City Council, Mayor. I'm here because I was pretty discouraged at the last meeting regarding the people in the audience, all their comments and their rudeness and people trying to speak and people talking over them. And I just want people to be a little more respectful of everyone, regardless of whether you agree with them or not. Just be more respectful.
The next speaker is Bobby O'Reilly and then Gonzalo Curiel.
Good evening, council. I just wanted to let you know that I have ordered and obtained plaques for Oroville Fire Department firefighters Gedney and Copeland, and I will be setting a tentative date for this following week to present those for the downtown house fire that they assisted in saving individuals out of, along with the officers that were previously presented plaques for. So I will let each of you know. I will send out an email. All of you are invited. And also wanted to say it's so nice to see everybody up there and the whole council open finally. Thank you.
Gonzalo and then Pamela Cervantes. Here's-
Yes.
You guys can pass around. My printer died, so I was only able to print off one set. So, good evening. My name is Gonzalo Curiel. I am a local aircraft owner and also appointed the AOPA ASN volunteer. I'm here today in regards to the rent increase with the new FBO operator and the airport manager raising our rents in hangars G and H. My rent went up 50%. It's now up to $150. Some others here have seen rent increases from $35 a month to $85 a month. One person had his rent go up from $120 to $450 a month. The hangars behind me in the H-wing have mostly gravel floors. They leak in the winter. The doors have been known to fall off in windstorms, and these hangars were built in the 60s. These hangars are now $225. Some hangars in Section A, which are the city-owned hangars across the way, are $220, and they have complete concrete and asphalt floors, and they have functioning doors. They were built in the 90s. My hangar is in a shared space that leaks in the winter and has standing water in the rainy season and a sliding door that requires constant maintenance. Some of us have been here a few years, others have been here since the 1950s. We feel this transition could have been handled a little better. We were okay with the conditions of our hangars based on the price of the rent we were paying. We feel if the city upgrades our hangars and then raises our rents, we'd be happy to pay for this increase. As it stands now, we'll be paying more and not seeing anything to justify it. According to the paper we received, we will see repairs to our hangars the rent will see repairs to our hangars and used to purchase patio furniture for the FBO and fund community events. I believe the recommended standard on hangars, they should be priced like similar airports around our area, and I've included that information in the packets that you have. We'd like the council to investigate the price increase and work with us as we are your customers and have a proven track record. We also would like to invite them to come out and look at our hangars in question.
Sir, your time's up. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pamela Cervantes and then Becky Wagner.
Hi, I'm Pam. I'm here to talk to you guys about the crosswalks at Orville High School. My son was in an accident in March. He is now paralyzed. He can no longer walk, so he's in a wheelchair. He went back to school 1 week after getting home from the hospital because it was important to him to finish school. He cannot do the crosswalks on his own. I talked to Matt with the city. He informed me that none of the crosswalks are ADA compliant. My son told me one day he crossed the street late because he had to use the restroom first and no one was out there. Usually one of the school personnel helps him across the street for the crosswalks that he can't do. No one was out there with him. So he had to be on the street by himself to go up the street to be able to get up onto the sidewalk to get to his next class. It's very important to me that he's safe. I don't want another accident. I don't want to spend 7 weeks in a hospital again. So I ask you to do what you can to fix these crosswalks so he can be safe. Thank you.
Councilmember Pippin. You're in the queue. Councilmember Smith.
Mr. LaGrone, I understand that we've moved some priorities up to look at that within the city, to look at the ADA compliance around the high school.
We have a barrier removal plan in place that we are working on, but it does include that area, and we will certainly look at that. And, I would also, the school has some responsibility to assist this student. I mean, I absolutely support his right to make it to his classes safely, and I understand his mother's concern, so absolutely we will look into this to see what we can do to make it as user-friendly as possible, as quickly as possible. We have to be realistic, though. We're talking about concrete and things like that, but we will do, if there's some temporary measures we can take, we'll do those.
Okay, thank you.
Becky Wagner and then David Rodriguez.
So I know the Orville High School has known about this since March. And so it just hasn't been moving along. So that's why we're pleading with you to move it along, because school starts on August 18th. And he is a very independent young boy that doesn't want to have to wait for someone to help him. He wants to be able to do it himself. He's already got his driverless license and he's driving again. So, and that's another problem for parking for him. There's not real good options for him to park. There was only 2 handicap spots, and one would be impossible for him to use the wheelchair to get out. So the other one is by the shop building, which works because he has shop, but doesn't work when he has to get across the campus for his classes. Thank you.
David Rodriguez and then Tariff Riesinger.
Good afternoon, everybody. The reason I'm here today is because I bought a property on Feather River Avenue, and it's been abandoned for the past maybe 25 years, 30 years, and currently I have my business in Gridley, California. And I was talking to my brother Sal and talking to other individuals how I wanted to bring back my business to Oroville since I'm born and raised. I fenced it off, got my grading permit. Since day one, it's been a constant battle at the building department. Getting help from people there has almost been completely impossible. You try to ask for directions, and I've had many times with different people, like I'll mention it, Jody Hunspringer. She'll ask you for directions. She'll literally just turn around, walk away, or smirk at you. I mean, it's just been completely I just think if the building department needs help, somebody needs to step in where we need to get somebody else to help out. Since then, I've had vandalism in my property on Feather River, and a project that should have been done within a month or so has now 5 months into this process, and I think it's completely unacceptable. It's a trailer, construction trailer, 12 by 42, and it's such a simple project that I want to keep my yards. I'm bringing all my business to Orville, which is several trucks, anywhere from 100 to 200 employees. They should be cashing their checks here, buying groceries, fueling up our trucks here, and I just think 5 months is unacceptable for a construction trailer to be set up. I'm driving around all over Orville, and people are putting up their stuff, and why can't I? I guarantee you that Gridley, California would never put me through this situation. Never. And I just had my guy quit on me right now, my main doorman lord, because he said this is unacceptable. He just said the wait time, the time it takes to get a permit is way too much. And how he's treated too is bad. Nobody else wants to step up.
Time's up, sir. Sorry.
Tariff Riesinger, and then Annie Terry.
Members, sorry I'm a little tired today. I was here 2 weeks ago and spoke with a few folks, gentleman, I don't think he's here this evening, and passed my name along to Mr. Goyer, who did contact me and gave me his email address. And I have left a message with him on the phone. I got to speak with him briefly about the homeless issue and how to tackle this. This is a diamond-faceted myriad of a whole bunch of different things that need to be incorporated together. And I could show you picture after picture on my phone of what I have to deal with where I'm at, where I work at, on a constant basis. Last week I had a gentleman that said, "You can't do anything to me. I could walk on this property anytime I want." I've kicked him off several times. I had to call PD for a lady last week who we've actually had to get a 602 trespass order against because she is so verbally aggressive and violent with her words. And I had a police officer come out who pretty much said to her, "Don't come back anymore." How many times we got to tell her, "Don't come back anymore"? She keeps coming back. I had the individual last week who told me he can come back anytime he wants, has cussed at patrons, staff, myself, threatened physical violence against me, and to still be told there's nothing you can do about it. I come here anytime I want. Today, 2 individuals, I'm getting ready to close, walked on the property, and I told them, "Hey, you guys, if you want to walk through, you're welcome to."
Sorry, sir, your time's up. Councilmember Smith?
Appreciate that. Sir, what's the name of your business?
Not to say, it's not my.
You share that with me then later?
I could.
Okay.
It's not my business, and that's why I'm not wearing my uniform today either. I'm not representing my company, and I'm not representing the business.
All right. Well, you have an open door to talk to me later.
I would love to, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Annie Terry, and then Bill Spear.
Good evening. So I gave all of you on the dais a copy of a couple of flyers that we've produced. We have the grand opening coming up on August 2nd of our resource center. It's called ORM Resource Center. The rescue mission for years has taken applications for food boxes, for clothing vouchers, for our Christmas and Thanksgiving giveaways that we do. Through our administration office on Bird Street at 2150 Bird Street. But we've expanded that. We received a community development block grant through the county to open up a resource center to serve clientele in Orville. And so some of the services we'll be offering are addiction recovery referrals, job search, resume building, job application assistance, housing referrals, low income and affordable housing resources, clothing vouchers, food vouchers, internet access to people who want to come and do their own job search or their own housing searches. And we've hired a case manager and a housing navigator to assist our clientele. And they don't have to be a rescue mission guest at the shelter. They can just be anybody off the streets. They don't necessarily have to be homeless. They just have to have a need that we can help them out with. So I want to invite all of you, not only you on the dais, but you in the audience as well. If anybody that didn't receive a flyer on the dais, if you'd like one from me, you can see me after this meeting. We just want to help to get the word out about this resource that's available in the city of Oroville. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak.
Annie, what is the address of the Resource Center and what times on August 2nd?
It's
2150
Bird Street.
2150 Bird Street?
And this flyer actually says from 11 to 2, but the normal hours of it are going to be 10 to 4.
Okay, so the grand opening is from 11 to 2 on the 2nd of August at 2150 Bird Street.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Smith had a question for you.
Yeah, Annie, also, as a community interest point, you guys also have opened up a cooling center as well. Why don't you just give the hours of operation?
That's from 11 to 6 at 4250 Lincoln Boulevard.
Okay, so anyone that needs to get away out of the heat.
Anyone that needs to get out of the heat, we serve lunch to them, we give them water, we give them snacks, and then we serve dinner at 7 o'clock if they want to stay late enough for dinner.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bill Spear, and then the cameraman.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, just coming here this evening to pray over y'all, pray over our city and the firefighters up on the hill. Father God, we thank you that you are always there, and we come this evening in the name of Jesus asking for your wisdom for the city council members as they handle the business of the city. We pray for your provision for our city, your direction. Thank you for the rescue mission and all that they're doing. And we pray that you would bless the event that's coming up. We pray for the fire that's all the firefighters are up there fighting, that you would protect them, protect the properties, help them to get it out. As we go into this fire season, bless the first responders, bless all those who put their lives on the line. Bless our police, bless the Hope Center, all those that are, we lift up all the homeless to you, and all the people that are serving or involved in trying to help. And we just pray a spirit of unity, that we'd all work together and with the same goals. And it says in your word, a house divided cannot stand. And so we just pray for unity in our city as we face these issues and problems. And thank you for the Nazarene Church being an evacuation center, and for all the people that are working in our city. Bless and anoint in Jesus' name. Amen.
The cameraman, and then our last speaker for non-agenda items is Kay Castro.
Good evening, Orville City Council. It's nice to see everybody back up here. Some places are back to normal, but some others are not. But I'm glad everybody's sitting together again and all up there as one body and not spaced out all over the place. I was going to talk about some more things related to what I spoke at last meeting, but I'm still waiting for a response to records, so that'll have to be pushed off. In regards to CAL FIRE, I've already spoken about what I've had to say in reference to them. I mean, whichever option it's going to be, I'll still be there filming Orville Fire or CAL FIRE at the end of the day. But in reference to CAL FIRE, I was at the fire today at 14th and Grand, and I had an investigator tell me, quote, "I just don't want you filming what we're doing right here." And I asked him, well, are you doing something that you shouldn't be doing that you don't want me filming? And his response was, we're investigating a fire and don't want the public to know just yet. But Action News is here. Every neighbor is out with their phone on Facebook. And I can say I've never had an Oroville Fire Department member tell me anything like that. So just putting that out there. And reference, I know some speakers have been talking about the time. I agree we should have some more time to speak. 3 minutes is plenty. Some people are new here, and 2 minutes, a little bit more, is just a little bit too not enough to get, some messages across. Speakers could have benefited tonight from having an extra meeting, and maybe just have the meetings at 5 rather than 4:30. I mean, we started close to 5 anyways today, and just pretty much that's about it with the 10 seconds remaining. Hope to get some more speaking time. Oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah, I've been at meetings where I've had 50 speakers speak, and they've gotten each their 3 minutes.
Our last speaker on non-agenda items is Kay Castro.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. Put it on record. Ms. Reynolds and I agree. I absolutely agree that I'm very, very disappointed that this has turned into such a personal, a lot of things are turning into what I see as a very personal issue of support for each of you, possibly each of you individually. I'd like to see us support Orville, and I'd like to see us come together as a city. We are an old city, a historic city, and all of you, all of the staff, all of you are very brilliant, articulate, genuine people. And I personally would like to see more of that come from not only you, but from us as well. And I'm making a commitment to you today that I believe that we should put our personal agendas aside and really, really look at each other's perspectives and really listen. I spent most of today on my little computer emails, and I got some very, very great responses from most of you. And I really appreciate that. And I'd like to encourage the people of Orville to continue to come here and speak and to continue to email you. And I know that you are responding to all citizens as you did to me. I'm not special. You are responding to all the citizens when you speak at all times. I personally would like to see that ADA requirement on that high school done tomorrow. And I frankly know nothing about the issue, but those two girls standing here crying are making me cry. And I wish the response would have been, we'll be out there tomorrow to fix it.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last of the public speakers on non-agenda items.
Okay, looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
So moved.
A second?
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Moving on to regular business, annual sanitary sewer service rates. Your microphone's not on.
There I am. This is just the standard annual certification of the sewer tax roll so that I can place it on the tax roll.
Yeah, come on.
There's no increase this year on the city side, but we are in year 3 of a 5-year increase on the score side.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public speakers on this item.
Do we have any comments from the dais? Having none, I'm looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8969.
I move that we adopt resolution number 8969.
I'll second.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, consider the Park Commission request for part-time cultural facilities curator.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Dawn Nevers, Community Development Assistant Director. As you stated, this request comes from the Park Commission. They are seeking to hire a part-time cultural facilities curator to manage the museums and act as a resource person for the displays and artifacts, and also a liaison to the docent association. The museums have been without a curator since 2013. That was when the city was forced to lay off a large number of staff due to fiscal constraints and operational reorganization. The previous position was responsible for those museums and the State Theater. Today, we no longer have that State Theater, so it would just be for the 5 museums. We have put this as a Tier 2 salary schedule under the master salary schedule. And our options today are amending that previous job description to remove the State Theater and just be the curator for the 5 museums and the programmer for the docents. In addition, let me see, amending the master salary schedule to add this position to it, also to authorize staff to begin the recruitment or forego this option altogether.
Do we have any comments from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, we have one speaker on this item, Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening again, Council. Thank you for the consideration on this item. Chairperson of the Parks Commission, and the reason that we ask for this is because we have a lot of items in a lot of the museums. Just for instance, the Chinese Temple has many items that need to be rotated every so often as we are learning, and we're recently made aware of the processes of that. Well, also with that comes wear and tear on the items. They can only be exposed to certain exposures of lights and heats and those kind of things. Some of the individuals and the docents know some of that information, but to protect the value of what we have in our museums, we feel that it would be a great necessity to have somebody with that particular skill set that can oversee those procedures and processes, value what we have, and then also work with other museums and such to see what can be done between museums. Also with the program like we are looking at with Mr. Wong at the Union, with them displaying some items, that curator would be able to make sure the value stays with the items that are going over there. So it's just a very valuable process altogether, and we feel that it is much needed. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I just want to thank the Parks Commission for forward thinking and addressing this. You know, we have a rich history as a community. I think it's incumbent upon us to preserve that history. With 5 museums, not too many communities can brag on having such a rich opportunity to preserve and share that history with its community, and not just our local community, not only just our children, but people come from around the world, literally, to come to our Chinese temple, for an example. And we have very unique artifacts that absolutely need that special care and preservation. If you're part of or paid attention much to our docent program, there's a lot of, they're a very committed group of people, but their numbers are dwindling. And I think it just takes staff time to commit to recruitment, support. There's just a lot of moving pieces that are involved in making and maintaining that program. And I think we have a responsibility now that we certainly have some additional dollars available to us. We have a responsibility to preserve that history. I wish it could be even more than what we're looking at here personally. And then additionally, you know, we think of our community as a tourism community. So we're maintaining that legacy, and we're wanting to share that with folks from around the world. I think we're a special community, and I think we need to show support by passing this because it's just important to maintain. History is so invaluable. And it's such a discussion around our country right now about the value of history and what that means and how we move forward, not just locally, but you know, as a nation. So I'm all in on this, and even more where we can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if we could weigh in on this from staff's perspective, this is an issue that is, you know, I unfortunately must remind the council that the museums are not profitable. This money is going to have to come from the general fund from somewhere else. These are lost leaders in our community. They are about quality of life and are important to our community. This position that we're suggesting to hire, you're most likely not going to find a local person who is a curator of a museum that would have the credentials to give this the care that's necessary. We're going into this with a low number to try to hire somebody. You know, what I see is a recipe for something where we're not going to succeed. We are just going through a process. I would rather suggest that we actually put this out through an RFP for and I know nobody likes this, but a consultant curator that can bring a professional in for an appropriate amount of time to overview or look through our museums and let us know what we need to do with them. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly what a curator is. I'm sure the Parks Commission is not also going to attempt to pretend that they know exactly what a curator is going to do. We've all heard of it, but I think we would be better off utilizing our dollars to bring in a professional to tell us exactly what we need and how we can get that through a contract service. So we do get that. So we do get that networking. So we do get the professional level that we're looking for our artifacts.
Councilmember Riggs.
Thank you, Mayor. As a former Parks Commissioner, I will just reiterate that the desire for the docents to have a lead person as staff and to have somebody to be able to do inventory and really care for our artifacts has really been a reoccurring thing, which in speaking with our lead docent, Michelle Kahn, she also expressed that this would really help with supporting our docent community, which I think is really important. Those people sign up because they want to share our history, not because they want to take care of a big array of artifacts. So I am encouraged to see it. I think that no matter what, we need to address how we handle and care for our cultural items and our history, and would look to also opportunities for this individual to enhance our museums and move those to be really attractions for our community, which would drive further investment in tourism.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. Thing on here. Thank you. Certainly, there's a large enough inventory that we have to have someone responsible for just simply the inventory. That's the simpleness here. The second thing is we have a long history of donated items to the city. And I know personally that's a real problem to maintain and identify. And many of those donated items have a little bit of strings attached. In other words, a piano to here or something there. And we need, our obligation is to make sure we maintain that in the agreement of acceptance of those donated items. But at the same time, I think there's a follow-up need, what Mr. Legron states, that we need some professional consultation or overview on occasion, maybe, not all the time. Ideally, I think this curator position is necessary to have someone boots on the ground in all the museums. But secondly, if we could work some kind of association with maybe one of the universities or museums of larger nature that might come here and offer us consultancy on the items we have, because if you don't know what it is, you don't know what it is. And the curator would be the one to locate that and identify that. So I see two things happening here. One is, yes, we need to have someone boots on the ground in all the museums that is responsible for them, but also the ability to reach out on an occasional basis to give us guidance over the items we have, because it's a large inventory. And as Councilman Smith correctly states, not many cities have this much, and we have to maintain it. And I realize the cost is there. It's not a profit return business, but that's not what the city's involved in anyway. So I certainly see this as a positive, and I would support this. But I also would look forward to once the curator's on board, that maybe the Parks Commission can look at some entity that might be interested in. Typically, universities would be a great idea, or a larger museum that might want to help out or partner or share with our activities would be a great idea. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I just want to add an additional perspective. So when I was in the tourism industry for nearly 10 years in our city, I hosted groups that were coming from all over the Bay Area to the greater Bay Area and the metropolitan area to enjoy our town. And one of the challenges was the inconsistency of hours for our museums. And frequently it would come to, for example, Bolt's Museum. You know, it's listed in the Smithsonian Institute that we have the largest collection in the world of hand tools. That's pretty cool, especially if you're a tool enthusiast. And so it's hard to quantify how that percolates down into dollars to our businesses and to our community and for all of us that live and work here. But I'd have to guess that we will receive more than our investment in this position that can help facilitate more consistency in hours and facilitate the keeping of our museum. So again, I think, though, that yes, the museums don't make much. They're not there necessarily for that. They're in perpetuity to sustain and maintain our history and all the things that I think have already been spoken to. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and weigh in on this a little bit. I'm in agreement. I've been going to these museums since I was a kid. We'd ride our bicycles down on Saturday and go. But I just think that we should approach it a little more cautiously, as Mr. Legron had stated, and get an expert, not just hire someone, because we don't know. I don't think any of us really know what all that entails. Each piece, each museum is unique, and each piece is unique. I would be willing to entertain the contract, looking for someone to come in and at least give us an assessment, and then support, maybe to start out 20 hours. I don't really think there's 30 hours a week for our 5 little museums to have a full-time employee. So those are my thoughts. I think that we should start out with Mr. Legron's suggestion and get somebody in here that knows what they're talking about, and then we can look at an employee for, I would think that it would make more sense to me for 20 hours, because I remember we did have a curator before, and there wasn't really a lot to do after the initial assessment. So, Councilmember Riggs?
I do agree also that a professional assessment would be beneficial. However, I would argue that participating in that professional assessment from a consultant would be a good training opportunity for that potential candidate as well. So Mr. Legron mentioned it might be difficult to find somebody who has a degree in, let me figure out what the exact words were, because it was quite bizarre, collections management. I just don't believe that there's many individuals who have that. I might be wrong. However, an alternative would be a degree in history. And so being able to participate also in that communication with the consulting firm to look at the assessment might be a really good opportunity to expand that person's expertise, and might broaden our scope of individuals to hire from. That's all. Thank you.
I can also say that staff has reached out to the Chico State Arts Department and History Department to see if they have any leads or any staff available to provide or to lend or to contract with for our museums. We have not heard back from them. We will try reaching out again, but at least if we could get a lead as to who might be available to contract with as a curator for our museums, that would be a start.
And I think council, what we could potentially do with this is move away from this concept of a curator, because like I said, I'm skeptical we're going to find somebody who's qualified to be a curator, and move more toward a volunteer coordinator, because there's many volunteer programs in the city that, could benefit from having a volunteer coordinator with an emphasis on the museums to work with the docents, and then also in conjunction with that, have the contract and have that training provided by the professional curator that comes in from somewhere else to our volunteer coordinator, who has their emphasis on our museum. So they do have that a little bit of specialized training, because we do have very valuable and rare things in our Chinese temple. I mean, some of those have been looked at. People have come as far as China to see those particular items, those puppets and different things in there. So it does deserve a very high level of care. We haven't been very good stewards of it to this point, but we need to do a better job. And I really don't think we're going to hire anybody locally that's going to have that expertise and knowledge to give it the true care that it deserves. I mean, so we could look at a volunteer coordinator position with an emphasis on the museums and also the contract and bring that back to you, or whatever direction you like to have. It's just an option.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
I'm in favor of the request of looking for a facilities curator, museum coordinator, putting it out there and finding what's in the community before we write off the community that there's nobody here. I think it at least deserves a look, and if nobody's found that's qualified, then we can look at other options, but it doesn't hurt to at least put it out to the community to see what we got. In my opinion.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I just want to second that. We may have a retired history teacher, or somebody at the college that's looking for a part-time. We can change the title. They're not a curator, but they're a resource person for the museums. I mean, we can work with that. But there may be an individual that, where there has to be some remuneration, compensation for the work. But I think, and then a dovetail with that, then if you brought in a professional, then it could offer some insight and training. But I would have to venture to guess, just based on our volunteers, that there's somebody with a passion that has some level of expertise or knowledge that could step into this and just, elevate and take care of and head off the developing issues with our museums. And so I think we need to, put this out. We need to hire at least a part-time person in addition to the professional.
And if I may,
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you, sir. If I may add, I'm hoping if this does go out from the council, that there are specific job description and stipulations put into place so that if somebody's not necessarily qualified to do something specific or handle something specific or know how to deal with our important artifacts, that the Parks Department or who's ever in charge of this specific person make sure that there's some oversight and things aren't done.
And Vice Mayor Thompson, the issue that you're talking about, this is the person that would know that. I mean, so they would be essentially, nobody is, I don't know how to handle an artifact. I mean, and we may have one opportunity to handle it appropriately, and then that's out the door. I mean, a little bit of extra knowledge isn't what we're looking for. That's a manager. If we want somebody to manage the museums, we can get somebody to manage the museums. A curator is a very specific individual, is very specifically trained to do very specific things, and that's the care of the artifacts. That's who would tell us if we are or are not doing it correctly.
Maybe I'll reclassify what I was saying in regards to when we hire the person, if the most qualified person has a certain set of skills, that we make sure that we only give them authority as a manager, curator, whatever you call it, to operate within their specific skill set.
Yes, sir.
And not do something that would be detrimental to the community.
Correct. So what I think I'm hearing, council, is that you'd like us to put this out, see what we get as far as applicants, qualifications, things like that, and then come back to you with, report back what we have from that, and then move from there, is what I'm hearing.
I'm on board with that. Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, I was wanting to make a motion that we send this back to staff for a further evaluation and needs assessment to address the needs of our museums.
Sorry, I stopped listening because I was looking up what it takes to become a museum curator. Or if there was like special trainings we could send somebody to. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we send this back to staff for a deeper analysis to review the needs of our museums, to come back with recommendation to move forward with this issue. I didn't say it exactly how I said it the first time, but I think you got the gist of the motion.
Councilmember Pittman wishes to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually okay with the staff to start recruitment, but I would add cultural facilities curator / custodian. Because that's what we're really looking for. We need somebody to take care of our stuff. Let's make it that simple, and maybe that'll help us in recruitment. If we use that word custodian of all of our, very valuable items. The curated part may come with consultants, and I'm very confident the Parks Commission will oversee this process, but right now, nobody is assigned to take care of our stuff. It is just kind of an add-on duty to the Parks Department. I'm very interested in a cultural facilities custodian to take care of those things, if nothing else, to make sure we're not cleaning things improperly. That's what I'm looking for right now, and certainly, we can move on and move into another step of something, but right now, I think it's important for us to have and I'll use the word curator / custodian. That way it might open up the recruitment process, be my suggestion.
We have a motion on the table. We are second. I don't hear a second. Does anyone wish to make an alternate motion?
I would. Do you want me to press my button first?
I do. Councilmember Riggs, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Reynolds. All right, I would make an alternative motion for staff to look into expanding this job description to meet the needs of our cultural facilities and parks. Might move into management of volunteers and recreational opportunities, and to put out a request for proposal for consultants to come in and assess what we have and possibly host trainings for handling, cleaning, and management of these artifacts. I think.
You have all that, Mr. LeGrand?
Great, that's good.
I got enough
I
chicken
started on a
scratch.
Post-it note and then
Do we hear a second?
For clarifying the motion, are you saying to move forward with recruitment?
Ooh. Well, I guess I would want the job description revised to adequately reflect the needs of our facilities.
And then, once it's revised, and recruitment?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Mr. LeGrone, could you please clarify the specifics in this motion, please?
Yes, ma'am. What I heard from the council was the council is requesting that we expand the description to include a facility volunteer coordinator, I'm just paraphrasing, also somebody to be a custodial person in caring of the artifacts. And then to put out an RFP to assess and to train for the care of the artifacts. There was more to it that Councilperson Riggs offered. I didn't get that in my chicken scratch. I just got those highlights, but I also, and then it was added at the end that they would like us to refine the job description to include those items Councilperson Riggs mentioned, and then to recruit for that position.
Under this same, salary schedule?
Most
I didn't
likely,
hear
when we look at,
anyone-
once we go through all of this and we look at it and we have an opportunity to assess what it is, we'll most likely be coming back with one that's
revising that.
probably more appropriate. You know,
All
this is,
right.
I'm not trying to demean or diminish anything, but this is most likely going to be a skilled position.
Absolutely, and that was my reservation.
And please don't get me wrong, our museums deserve it. I want them to have the best
Right.
because we have, very good stuff, very important history in there.
Thank you.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Okay, moving on to item number 8, alternative plan for increased fire protection services and provide staff direction as to how to proceed with plan or with contracting of fire protection service.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. What you have before you tonight is a follow-up report from the previous council meeting regarding some additional information that was requested. At the July 6th meeting, the council asked for additional information regarding the alternative fire protection plan. Those items that the council were asking for is what is the cost for the CAL FIRE EEC, the Emergency Command Center, which is dispatching, to dispatch fire for the city of Orville. What would be the compensation for the disparity in the auto aid agreement for the additional calls that are ran into the Thermalito area that is located within the city of Orville? The council asked for what is the cost, other than an estimate, for the volunteer reserve program for 18 members, and then also what was the cost for the Community Connect software. Staff has researched all of those things and been in contact with CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE has provided a couple of prices for those various activities. For the dispatching from the EEC Center from CAL FIRE for fire for the city of Orville, it would be $308,861 per year. To offset and pay for, to compensate Butte County CAL FIRE for the disparity in the auto aid agreement, the cost for that would be $878,377.83 per year. To implement a reserve volunteer program, the cost to include all of the PPE, insurances, oversight, overhead, including 18 volunteers working 48 hours per month at step A of our firefighter salary schedule for 12 months would be $284,080. Then the Community Connect software will cost the city an annual subscription of $13,900. That was the information that was requested from council at the previous meeting. A couple of additional things that have occurred since that council meeting is that on July 7th, we conducted 2 public meetings, one in the morning, one in the evening. The meetings were attended. It was sparse, the attendance. I really wish on important issues like this that more people would attend, but, we got what we could. We had 29 individuals that attended the meeting. There was brief presentations by staff and also by representatives of CAL FIRE. There were 10 individuals that asked 53 questions at the 2 meetings combined. On July 14th, we met with LAFCO regarding the process to contract with CAL FIRE and to comply with SB 239, which is local service contracts for fire protection service, because it is something that is a process that requires LAFCO to evaluate what we're doing and to ensure that we have met all of the hurdles with that. We met with LAFCO. LAFCO has advised us that from here, if the council were to make the decision to contract with CAL FIRE, the next steps would be to have CAL FIRE, authorize CAL FIRE to request to make application to LAFCO for providing fire service to the city of Oroville. We would also, with that process, there would be an application fee that is approximately $17,000. The Mercury Register misreported it at 17 million. It's not 17 million, it's 17,000 for the application fee. And then the final step to that would be signing an agreement if that was the direction of the council. I do have some additional information that I'd like to share with you. We did receive some correspondence, if I can find what I did with them. We have received some correspondence over the weekend. Councilperson Pittman has a letter that he would like the council to have. And we have a letter also from LAFCO explaining the position of LAFCO for the future of annexations, what issues that we have facing us because of our current fire service. Not because it's not a good service, just because of the fact that we haven't grown it over the last 3 decades. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything further to add. I was just reporting back the information I had. Staff is awaiting direction from the council so that we can begin whatever process it is that the council directs us to take forward.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have 4 speakers on this item. The first speaker is Mike Brown.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds, members of the council. As I've told you before, I favor consolidation, and I really am skeptical of the alternative. I don't think it will work. It's contrary to the whole underpinnings of the relationship that Biggs and CAL FIRE, Gridley and CAL FIRE, the town of Paradise and CAL FIRE, and Butte County and CAL FIRE have had for a combined 150 fiscal years. By contracting CAL FIRE directly, they would answer to you directly. By subcontracting through Butte County, it puts the county, which is a much larger political animal, in a position that at times could be leveraged by the other partners because you would be treated different. I just think it's the wrong foundation, whether or not it's more expensive, equally expensive, or less expensive. If you're going to contract and consolidate, I recommend that you do it the same way the other partner agencies you would have been doing it for all these 150 fiscal years, because then you're partners and you're not always peering into one another's suitcases or glasses when budget times are tight and people wonder who's getting more for their money. I've seen this happen. And in a larger county, if there were dozens of local jurisdictions, that might be the answer for a county like Los Angeles, where CAL FIRE doesn't participate except to pay them to do the state's job, or in Riverside, where Riverside pays CAL FIRE to do the county's job. But their cities are growing so fast, the county tries to run herd over fire protection. I don't think you need Butte County to tell you how to run herd over your annexations and fire protections. You already have the majority of the county fire stations in one Board of Supervisors district. Thank you.
The next speaker is Stephanie.
Everybody at each other's throats, everybody. And I don't have anything in this race, whatever you want to call it, but what I do see is nobody coming together. I hear a lot, there's a lot of hearsay, and this hearsay, that hearsay, this hearsay. You're not working together to come together as a community, and some of the community members are not helping that either. But I think tonight is the night, and everybody needs to stop hanging in limbo. We're looking to the council for an answer, whether it be go or don't. Just the firefighters are in limbo. Everybody's just hanging on every limb. I hope tonight's the night. Thanks.
Bobby O'Reilly.
Thank you again for the opportunity to speak freely to our council who we elected to represent us and to be our voice. I too hope tonight is the night that we, as the community, can rest knowing, I want to choose my words wisely, because we know that we're safe in both hands. We know that regardless which way this goes, we're going to be safe. There are things in place right now that guarantee that, as far as fire service goes. Regarding another individual's comments a moment ago about other contracts with other jurisdictions, I would just say that just because others don't have that particular contract doesn't mean that it's a bad contract. It just means that's the choice that others have made. I also have spoke to an individual with the county who wasn't aware that CAL FIRE was making decisions for them. When they were informed that there was a possibility or a potential for the city to offer something with this alternative plan, not that it has to be the exact alternative plan. It can be a hybrid of the growth plan and the alternative plan. It doesn't have to be one of the three. However, when they were made aware that a potential was thrown out and that the city was told by a CAL FIRE employee that they are not interested in exploring those ideas, the county had no idea. And they're not happy with that answer.
The next speaker is Steve Terry.
Good evening, Council. I'm just, everyone knows where I stand on the issue, so I'm just going to say it. Out of the community meetings, I was surprised when I just heard it was basically, I'll translate, my way or the highway. We're not interested in a hybrid plan. We're not interested in anything. It's just do it our way or else. I was also not real pleased when I heard that Chief Messina wrote a letter to LAFCO and opposes annexation if we don't go with CAL FIRE. These sound like threats, and it almost sounds like extortion. And I'm not real crazy about that kind of stuff. Finally, myself, I am personally, I would favor on this list, what's listed as option one. I think the city for years has neglected our fire department, and by the council's own specification on that, and I think we need to build. I would tell you, I think we should have started building this very year. I think that the measure you reflected that we could have done it this year too, but instead they're sitting and waiting. If that doesn't work, then I'm still in favor of the hybrid plan. There's two before you that work. The fact is, the county could be reimbursed for that money, and that takes care of that problem. The fact that CAL FIRE is not interested in that agreement is between the county and the city. And so I really think we need to consider that. It is not about giving control to three organizations, having the county have a stake in it. It's about us reimbursing the county for what they've reported as being an inequity. That's that issue. And we could leave it alone at that and go with that and keep our fire department, and let's reinvest and let them do what they have always done. And that's taking care of the city of Orville. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Cloud Watcher.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Hi. I would like to say that I think it's very important that the city represents the local fire department, the city of Oroville's fire department. Today there was a fire in Thermalito, and I'm sure it was a partner agencies to come and put that out. I think CAL FIRE has been doing a good job covering areas that the city of Orville does not cover. I think there's some transparency when you talk about not many people came to the meeting. You held the meeting the day after the July 4th weekend. So that's a holiday weekend for a lot of people. And also it was at the Municipal Auditorium, which is now called the Orville Convention Center. There's been no announcement on that name change as far as I know. So I'm glad that building is being used again. I think the elephant in the room really is the annexation with the city council moving forward. They want to prove they have fire coverage so they can annex Thermalito. Therefore, they're asking for CAL FIRE and this change to happen. And I think that that needs to be discussed. It needs to be put on the table because the CAL FIRE and the Orville Fire Department, from what I understand, are not the ones that brought this to the table. The current city council is the ones asking for this proposal and for this change. And they paid to have a big report done and analysis. Now they want to pay fees to LAFCO in order to, from my view, collect on the revenue eventually by hoping to annex Thermalito. If the city wants to invest in the city of Oroville, when you're building new houses, invest in your fire department as well. The fire department has a history in this town, and I think that partnership is really the key. The partnership between CAL FIRE and the Orville City Fire. I don't think it's the time.
Thank you. Your time's up.
Any departments. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last of the public speakers on this item.
Do we have any comments from the dais? Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. Appreciate that. This will be a part of a long conversation, obviously. And to Mr. Legrone, it's my understanding that the city firefighters have offered to work a 72-hour work week. Is that correct?
Their association has asked to negotiate that with the city.
Okay. So that being a case, do we have an estimates of the change in the cost for the fire department?
No, because we have not estimated that.
Okay. So that's something.
I'm sorry, we have not negotiated that, Councilman.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's something I think we need to know before we make any major decisions here. The other thing is, and some of you in the audience haven't seen this LAFCO letter, but essentially, a letter was sent from Mr. Chief Messina to LAFCO that we had not seen. And when we had a pending annexation to LAFCO August 5th meeting of a long worked on subdivision that's across the street from an existing city subdivision, LAFCO is now recommending denial of that annexation. I find that absolutely appalling. We've had dozens of annexations in this city of hundreds of different homes and residences, and we have provided fire service to all of those, even after they're annexed. So now, because of that particular communication to LAFCO, now we're shut down. We can't annex anything because they deferred that agenda item. It's not even going to be considered. And I have great sympathy for the applicant because he made an application in good faith. And now this issue is confusing things. Secondly, even if we had a CAL FIRE contract tomorrow, wouldn't change a thing to that fire service delivery. That just means we got state employees on city apparatus. Doesn't build a new station, doesn't pay for the county, or doesn't compensate the county for any additional work for their fire station. It doesn't do anything. I didn't find out about this till late Friday. That's why I had to submit a letter, and I appreciate seeing the letter from LAFCO. And it states very clearly here, at current levels, the city is already too large and spread out to achieve response objectives. Currently, the fire department does not have adequate resources to accommodate desired response without heavy subsidization from surrounding agencies. 40 years of doing the business, I've never seen such a comment. My only observation, the word I could use is called extortion. And I'm appalled by that. That's not what we're here to do. That's not what good neighbors do. Consequently, I have a number of questions, to say the least. One is of the hybrid calculations, and I appreciate staff, you've done a lot of work. And from the group that asked you to look at that, I think it's great that we have the good numbers to look at. Because numbers are a part of this. The other part of this is what's going to be the strategy of the city. What's going to be the service provision. And I have no question of the numbers. The only one that I have is the response or the reimbursement to Station 63. And I understand their formula here. We didn't know the numbers before. They were all guesstimates. And I appreciate having solid numbers. And some of you might see the staff report, but essentially they took the county contract to all the fire stations, look at all the responses that occurred, and then divided that into a number that is a per incident response. That came up to 2,158 per incident. And then we looked at how many calls are actually delivered in the city by the fire station they have in the city. And that roughly comes to 407 for the calendar year of 2020. Now we have hard numbers to look at. Before they were guesstimates. That, by simple math, comes up to 878,377. The difficulty, and I'll own this because we were trying to look at some way to develop a reimbursement that I have is, if we're going to look at incident numbers, every year that's going to change. And if we do go down that path, do we adjust that change each time? It becomes very difficult. What I might suggest down the road, and I don't know if you have an answer to this question, but we just take a look at, I'm told the staffing for our county station is roughly 5 personnel. It would seem to be more appropriate to pay or compensate the county for roughly 2 or 3 of those personnel, whatever that cost is, as a reimbursement and a shared cost for that operational station. And the question I would have to you, Mr. Legron, is what is the cost for a firefighter position with full comp? I don't know if you know that number or not.
What I did, Councilperson Pittman, is I did look into that, and I looked at a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter. 3 personnel for 1 year is approximately $540,000, including their benefit package.
So,
and
what was that number again?
540,000. I took that number from the original proposal and
okay.
Figured it
that.
from there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way for both the city and the county, that they can count on the fact that we'll be reimbursing them for 3 positions. So, and you're averaging the firefighter, captain, and all that into one amount?
I did it a captain, a firefighter, and an engineer because the original proposal had the prices for those. Now, keep in mind that is also the top step. So
certainly,
just so we know, there may be some.
Yeah. I have to think, and in consultation with others in the business, that seems to be a little fairer way if we go down the path of reimbursement, that they would count on that dollar amount and it wouldn't change based on call load and all that other things. Because essentially the 407 calls is of the Station 63 calls as 1,526 a year. So that's 26% of their total calls are in the city. I think that's fair compensation or reimbursement to the county. So I would throw that in the hybrid plan as the alternate number, I guess is the word to use, 540. The other factor that comes to mind here, the only way we're going to improve and satisfy LAFCO is in fact raise the level of service. So by reimbursing the county station, that's raising the level of service to a guarantee. The other thing is the hybrid looks at adding more personnel to the inventory with the reserve firefighter program. The other factor is that may come about is the negotiation with the city firefighters, which is not completed, just initially started. And they're the ones that brought that, I'm told. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, they did bring it.
Okay, so that means we're gonna have a different cost factor for the firefighters. But my guess is, if we do go down that path and we accept that, we probably can staff 3 full engines daily, which is more than we do today. Oh, well, actually, we're doing that today, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, please. So we have 3 engine staff. So it wouldn't be a big deal to find some place to put a fire engine at the airport and satisfy LAFCO's problem, because we have the staffing to do it. we have room at the downtown, but I think we could find somewhere at the airport to put a fire station and allow for growth of the community. Got to remember, the Cal Fire contract doesn't put another station at the airport. Doesn't do that. So I just say that personally, I think we've got a lot of things to work on. I'd like to have some answers to those questions that we're talking about in terms of, would the county find it acceptable, this different number, the 540,000 he brought up? Would they find that acceptable? I think the supervisors would. In fact, I know they would. I'm not suggesting that, but you know, I know they would. I have no problem in the proposed dispatch contract. As Mr. Brown states, you know, regionalization of certain services is a great idea. It works. It's fine. I just have a problem that if we're truly going to improve the service, we had an old agreement back in 2003 called SCRFMA, and SCRFMA would have delivered exactly what this needs, but for whatever reason today it doesn't exist. I don't know why it doesn't exist, but that delivered everything needed, and maybe we need to go back and renegotiate SCRFMA to a SCRFMA, a South County Fire Rescue Management Agreement. And what that was, it delivered. I had to dig it up because I was a part of that in the past. But essentially, by agreement to everyone, I'm just going to virtually read it. I don't want to give you all the detail. We delivered to the Orville area on a residential structure fire, 1 duty chief, 3 engines, 1 truck company, 2 volunteers, 2 water tenders. Commercial structure fire got 2 duty chiefs, 4 engine companies, 1 truck company, 2 volunteers, 2 water tenders. A wildland fire season, duty chief, prevention officer, 6 engines, 2 volunteers, 1 air tech, 2 air tankers, 1 helicopter, 2 water tenders, 2 dozers. Traffic accidents, a duty chief, an engine, and a truck, and a volunteer company. That existed in 2003. I don't know where we lost it. So I think there's time to get back to this deal and make it work for everybody concerned, not just the county, and not just the city, but the county and our other fire district, both. That was the old SCRFMA agreement, and in fact, we got awards for this agreement from the International Fire Chiefs Association. So those are things that I think are valuable to the citizens of Oroville to deliver. I'm like everyone in the room, I'd love to have this thing over, but there's more information to gather. There's more to work on, and I think it's to the benefit of the entire city. Just to conclude my remarks, because I've burned up a lot of time here, and I apologize for that. But I don't apologize for making a recommendation that certainly I'm a strong supporter of the dispatch change, strong supporter of the reserve program. It's going to benefit all of us. The Community Connect software, oh my God. I only dreamed about that kind of stuff back 40 years ago. You know, when I walked in the door here was December 3rd, 1974. Anybody in the room born then? I walked into this building, and that's when I got hired. And we talked about something like that. Now what, how many years later, we're talking, but you can buy it for, I was shocked, $13,000, are you kidding me? I was thinking it's like 6 figures. So that certainly has a huge value here. And the things that are put together here. The other thing I'll throw out here too, that I contacted an old city administrator from Orville, David Jenkins. Mr. Lando, you might know who I'm talking about. He served this city in the late 70s, and he served many cities up and down the state. He's just retired from the South Lake Tahoe as city administrator. So he's someone that has city municipal activities well under his belt. And I asked him to take a look at our situation. And he gave me a long letter. And in that letter, he reminded me something. And I go, wow. He said, what about City Charter Section 21? Wow. I mean, he remembered it. I had to look it up. Mr. Legron, would you pass those out to the council?
Yes, sir.
And there's extra copies. Anybody else wants to see that? I know it by heart now after. It's an interesting section of the city charter. It's the only place in the city charter that mentions anything about the fire department. And it states, the city of Orville shall have a fire chief. The city council shall appoint the fire chief. Period. period. And then it says the city fire chief shall submit the rules and regulations to the city council for its approval. And it has another line that says, during times of emergency, the city fire chief shall serve as supreme authority, even over law enforcement. I'm not sure what supreme authority means. I really don't. I worked a long time and I kept asking the attorneys, what does that mean? But anyway, that's our rule book. That's what the city charter tells us as council members to do. Now, maybe CAL FIRE can amend that in their contract, that the city council shall appoint the fire chief. Maybe they can, maybe they can't, I don't know. Maybe the city council can change the charter. I don't know. I think there's a legal question here that needs to be satisfied. I would appreciate our city attorney to bring us forth an opinion about that. Because if you propose to have a contract over here, how do you stay with the charter? Because I'm not interested in violating the charter at all. But I want to thank David Jenkins for reminding me about it. He knew it off the top of his head. I go, you've been in the business 40 years. How'd you figure? Oh, yeah, I just remember. Orville's a very unique place. And I think that's what we owe the citizens. It's the only place in the city charter that the fire department's even mentioned. So those questions, I think, need to be properly answered so that we can move forward with anything. I also will make comment that March 2nd, we did have a considerable amount of people in Oroville let us know their opinion. We had about 300 signatures on a petition saying, keep the city fire department. We had 25 emails, keep the city fire department. As an elected official, I don't forget. I have a copy of those signatures. That's what our job is to do. But I believe that with the analysis we have, we'll have a good service delivery, whatever it may be. I just raise questions to make sure we're not doing it wrong. So that's all I have for now. Thank you for the time.
Are there any other comments from the dais? Councilmember Goodson.
That was an excellent point that Mr. Jenkins raised and that you broached as well. So I'm curious, Mr. Huber, can you share what that, would there be any legal ramifications if the charter was not enforced?
Well, I'm not sure let me back up for a moment. So there are several positions that are outlined in the charter that are required, and I'll use one, for example, city attorney. There is similar language related to the city attorney that says that there shall be a city attorney appointed at the pleasure of the city council. It's very similar language. That doesn't mean that the contract, that you can't have a contract city attorney. That's what the city has always had, at least to my knowledge. It's my opinion, and I'm happy to put this in a memo, but I believe that if it is the desire of the council that you want to execute a contract for fire service, the contract would need to designate someone from CAL FIRE by position as the fire chief. That would need to be a named person. And what you can, let me just pick, I'll give you as an example. One of my clients in Monterey, the Monterey airport, they contract with fire service with the city of Monterey. The fire chief for the city is also named as the fire chief for the airport. Something similar could be done here, and I'm not familiar with exactly what, in this instance, Chief Messina, what his title is, but his title could be designated as the fire chief for the city of Oroville, but it would need to be something that is specifically called out in the contract. It would not be wise to go without having that provision in the contract. But is my legal opinion that you can do that by contract with, with the fire service that comes along with it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the dais? Having none. Councilmember Hatley.
Thank you. This is for the attorney. Is he there?
I'm here, sir.
Okay. So, under this contract, so if the council, if you didn't get 5 votes, let's say they designate in the contract that it's Chief Messina, and you don't get 5 votes from this council, then what happens?
Well, interestingly enough, for a contract position, the 5-vote requirement is for an employee, for an employment contract. You would actually only need for a contract, for example, for fire services contract, you actually would only need 4 because you would not have an employment contract, but a contract for fire services that would name someone as the fire chief. Again, it's similar as to the city attorney position. Because these positions are not employees of the city, hired by the city, but they are contracts for services. It is, and again, I'm happy to put this in a memo for the council, but it actually does not require 5 votes. It only requires a majority of the council.
Okay, because what I'm reading here under this article, it says that the fire chief will be appointed by the council. Okay, so, and that always takes 5 votes. So what I'm saying is, if we're still going to have a fire chief, or is it just a fire chief by this contract, then call anybody the fire chief then, and it's not up to this council then. So we are not standing up what the our thing says here, and so if under this article for the chief of the fire department, and I'm just trying to get around, how are we getting around 5 votes to hire a chief? Because that's what we're doing, is hiring a chief, right?
Well, so you would not be hiring a chief. You would be naming someone as the fire chief. Again, the issue is it is when you're hiring someone as an employee, as a department head employee, that contract does require a 5/7 vote pursuant to I think it's Article 6 of the city charter. The naming of there are 2 positions that are named like this off the top of my head. One is the city attorney and the other is the fire chief. I believe the police chief is also, I'm going by memory, but I think the police chief is also mentioned as well. If you were to contract for services, for fire services, you would not be hiring the chief. You would be naming someone to serve in that position. Again, happy to lay this out in a memo for the council. But you can contract for services, and it does not require a 5/7 vote of the council.
I understand that. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the discussion. I also say that I think there's a fair amount of questions here that would need to be answered. I'd like to see a city attorney's memo on this particular issue, because the line on section 21 states there shall be a fire chief, chief of the department, and the city council shall appoint. And the appointment has a process. So I need clarification on that before we should move forward on anything. Otherwise, we'll potentially be in violation of that. I also would like to see if the county would be acclimable to the new numbers in terms of paying for a certain amount of positions. And I think there's some interesting things that we need to find out about before we can make a good vote on this. I don't think there's a time restraint here, and I'm okay to have that researched until the next council meeting so that we are all having a clear shot at what's happening here. And in fact, I'll even make a motion that we have that direction and be brought back to the council for the next meeting.
I second.
I'll make an alternate motion that we adopt item number 3, which will adopt resolution number 8970, authorizing and requesting CAL FIRE to initiate an application with LAFCO for contracting of fire protection services from CAL FIRE for the city of Orville, and authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $17,000 for the application fee to LAFCO, and adopt resolution number 8971, authorizing and directing the mayor to sign all necessary documents for the contracting process for fire protection service for the city of Oroville with CAL FIRE.
I'll second.
Okay, voting on Reynolds' motion
Second
first?
yes.
Okay. Motion carries with 4 yeses and 3 nos.
Did you wish to follow through with your motion, Councilmember Pittman?
Certainly.
What was your motion again, sir?
To have staff continue to develop the information requested.
Voting on Councilmember Pittman's motion.
Motion fails with 4 nos and 3 yeses.
All right, moving on to reports, discussions, correspondence, council announcements and reports. Does anyone from this council wish to announce anything or report anything? Having none, looking for future agenda items. Councilmember Goodson.
Yes, I would like the council to review the charter line by line and eradicate that which is obsolete and to make necessary revisions that would be brought before the voters.
Any other future agenda items? Administration reports, Mr. LaGrone.
Mr. Mayor, just an item has come to my attention that is not on the agenda, but I would like to get just a consensus of the council. There is a tree that is in very bad shape at the Butte County Historical Society. It's at McClellan and Yard. It's about 40 feet tall. It's completely dead. And the Historical Society is requesting that we remove that tree. It's on private property of the Historical Society. The Historical Society has for many years archived our history in their facility at no cost to us and taken care of that. They're a 501c3. They do take care of our things. So in exchange for that service in which we've been receiving, I would like to have our Parks Department remove that tree as just gratis to them in exchange for the work that we've been getting. So if I don't see any pushback on that, I will have them do that.
I'm in agreement with that.
Other than that, I think that I'm done. I mean, that's a lot on my mind, but nothing that comes to that's
I
important.
have a future agenda item.
Yes, sir.
How's that wall going?
I don't want to talk about the wall.
You know which wall I'm referring to?
Oh, I know exactly what wall you're referring to. It's not the one either. Well, I'm just gonna leave that alone. Right now, Olive Branch,
Olive Ranch Apartments.
Olive Ranch Apartments are in process. It's part of that project, and it will come along as that project builds itself out. We'll begin work on that wall.
So they're going to do it?
Part of it. That's part of the agreement that we have with them.
Great.
So-
Lighting?
You know, I'm not really sure. Dawn's gonna have to talk to what the details of that are. It's gonna be vinyl black chain link fencing with a cable through it. I mean, so I'm teasing you. It's the one that you didn't like originally that I came with.
The art wall will be at the back of sidewalk along that hillside. The front of the back of curb will have a simple fence that you can see the artwork clearly through, and it will be unobstructive to traffic and pedestrians.
Cable fence, not
Cable
simple.
fence. Simple, yes, not simple, cable fence, correct. Also, there will be lighting. There will be decorative landscape along that hillside as well. At the peak, that wall, I believe, will be 12 feet high as you near the fish hatchery. For the palm trees, they will leave the palm trees as they are, but they will install decorative down lighting, and so it'll create a nice ambiance as you're walking up or down that sidewalk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does that?
And a conveyor belt for those that need help getting up.
Yes.
Chief Tens.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I just wanted to report that it's been a busy fire season. As everyone's well aware, we've been out assisting as much as we can, all the way stretching as thin as we possibly can. But I had some pictures tonight, hopefully we're able to share. We've been part of a couple different strike teams. Started with the tenant fire in June 30th. Started pretty early. Our Type 3's been really busy out assisting, hiking lots of hills, laying lots of hose, and providing a lot of support to surrounding communities. They did 15 days. As they finished up the tenant fire, they moved along to the Beckworth fire, and they were asked to divert to another fire, but due to the fire that's close by, the Dixie fire, I asked for our apparatus to return and to support local needs. If you could just click through a few of them, there's nothing really special, but these guys went out, had a lot of sleepless nights. I commend them. They've done a great job. They're a great staff. They're working more hours than could imagine right now. Backfilling the needs and the vacancies in our staff, while also going out and providing services to surrounding communities. Here locally, this picture here shows our new AR support that was recently updated and purchased with the CAPS unit in the back. They're out supporting the Dixie fire and all the needs for the helicopter, so that resource is still local. It's out at our airport and providing the surrounding agencies that are coming in and contract copters that are coming in and just providing support out there. God forbid if anything was to happen, we're right there to help suppress any fires. That's about it. Thank you.
Tom Lando.
Again, very quickly, there's a great deal of interest in both commercial and residential development in the community. Wes, Matt, Don, and Leo are working with a number of people, including several large employers. And then in addition, just one last one, Mark Mendez has submitted a draft agreement for the Gateway property, and we're working on that. All this is probably 2 to 5 years in terms of actual fruition.
Thank you. Ruth?
Busy working on the 2 RFPs that the council has approved for the finance department. One is the payroll and time attendance software, and the other is to replace our financial software. We have closed on the payroll, time, and attendance, and we had 6 responses, and we're going to demo 4. And then the software for the RFP for software closes this week. So we're going to kind of wait and see what the software looks like to make sure they're compatible. But we'll be bringing our recommendation back to you soon.
Thank you. Amy, did you have something to say? Okay. Don?
We recently hired 2 new code enforcement technicians. They started last Monday. They are acclimating very well to the position. We have a mandatory update of our housing element that we posted an RFP for. We received 1 response to that RFP, so we will be bringing that back to council August 3rd. Also, At the previous council meeting, Councilmember Riggs requested a breakdown of our engineering department. That can be found on page 99 of your agenda packet under the community development engineering department update. There's several other updates, very comprehensive for the month of June.
Well, with that, we will adjourn the meeting.
I'd like to have a quick comment.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you, sir. Maybe somebody didn't read the letter, it was just handed out to us, that said no growth. This council just put a big block at all these nice projects. You just put a brick wall right in front of them. Too bad you didn't read the memo.
With that, we will adjourn the meeting till August 3rd, 2021 at 4 p.m.
Ooh, that was way up there.
That's yours?
That's yours.
But did you bring it?
Yes,
Have it?
yes, you can. Because if I get hungry, I get grumpy. And that's probably not good for this. Oh, I'm glad we spoke words. You know.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, Larry, how you doing?
I thought I recognized you.
Larry Trace. Hey. You know Stephanie and Carla Small?
Volunteer to help you with the curator museum.
Larry, this is Carla Small.